Hello and welcome to There's a Workshop for That. I'm your host, Nati Ravez, and today we're diving into a topic that's close to my heart, creating space where everyone can thrive. We talk a lot about facilitation here, but today we are putting a special focus on neuroinclusion, how we as facilitators can design experiences that empower neurodivergent individuals to bring their full brilliance into the room. And to guide us through this, I'm joined by the incredible Jane Livesey. Jane is neuroinclusion advocate, ADHD empowerment coach, and collaboration specialist with over 25 years of experience in the legal and tech industries. She brings not just expertise here, but lived experience. As a late diagnosed ADHDer with autism traits, she knows firsthand the challenge and strengths that come with neurodivergence. Beyond her work in advocacy and coaching, Jane's passion for music, movement, yoga, creativity, and connection deeply influences how she designs inclusive, human-centered experience. And one of those experiences, an inclusive facilitation event happening in London on March 21st, something we'll talk about towards the end of the episode. So stay tuned. And first thing first, welcome, Jane. How are you doing?
Hi, Natty. I'm good. It's a Monday, cold, very grey day in London. So I brighten it up a little bit.
I'm so happy to welcome you, and I'm so happy to see you very soon in person in London in a few weeks. We will talk about it.
Yeah, it's really exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, can't wait for it. But first, could you tell us a little bit about you? What is your background? How did you came into what you are doing today?
Yeah, and thank you for the lovely introduction.
You're welcome.
Gosh. Yeah, I mean, my background is legal and technology, historically. Something that I've always been really passionate about is the people side of things. So it's always been about relationships, being in connection. How can we do things, and how can we do things differently with tech? And I think I've now been, it will be 3 years this year that I went independent, away from being corporate. And part of that driver was really around what change can you actually make on the outside versus what you can do on the inside. So yeah, so a little, I've worked for really tiny, small organizations through to big corporate global firms, had the pleasure of spending time in Hong Kong and such. So it's been, yeah. And so now I'm an ADHD coach, leadership coach. I work with teams and individuals, do a lot of strengths-based coaching. We'll probably touch upon that, why it's important as well to be aware of our strengths and how we thrive, especially in the neurodivergent community.
Yeah. And talking about that, you told me that you have been very late diagnosed ADHD. And we had already great conversations about this topic. I would like to know, ADHD is often very misunderstood. People have this picture of children super active, but don't really relate to what it is to have ADHD for an adult. And you told me last time that this is actually something very new, that it is, that there is a diagnosis for adults. Could you tell me what is misunderstood there?
Yeah, I mean, so history, and so people are probably going, so everyone's got ADHD now?
Yeah.
Everyone's a little bit autistic, everyone's a little bit ADHD. And so from a history side of things, adults couldn't be diagnosed before 2008. So that is only 17 years ago. It's really not that long. And the research that was done on ADHD was only on white boys, usually from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Autism, slight difference. A lot of the research was done more on white middle class boys. And so how it was even being able to be diagnosed in the diagnostic manual, any clinician who's doing an assessment, there's a manual that they assess you on. And so there were certain traits that were showing up in just these boys. And it wasn't considered much wider on, say, for example, for some women, and often a lot of women, it can show up as more inattentive. So the stigma is it's boys that are really disruptive, can't sit still. So that might be one type, which would be a hyperactive side. And you might see me doing a lot of gesticulation because I have both combined, which is the hyperactivity side of ADHD and inattentive. And the inattentive can more be internalized. So if you are doing quite well at school, you're not noticed.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're average, if you're all right, even though you might be working incredibly hard to just be all right, you're not noticed and you used to fall away from the system. The other interesting piece from a history side of things is only in 2014 was it recognized that you could have co-occurring conditions, ADHD and autism, for example.
Mm-hmm.
You never say the word dyscalculia, which is around numbers, dyspraxia. And so there's all of these huge amount of conditions. And so before 2014, you couldn't be diagnosed with having more than one condition. So we've got so much more awareness of ADHD. It's changed in how it can be diagnosed. And stigma is still there, but the stigma is changing somewhat because there's this awareness about actually, let's look at what are some of the positives around ADHD or what are some of the positives around, because guess what? Neurodiversity is we all think differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Neurodiversity, we all think differently.
And what does it mean for organization or all this awareness about the fact that there is much more neurodiversity or neurodivergence? I don't know what is the right word, by the way.
I did. If anyone is interested, look me up on LinkedIn. I did a post recently because even I get confused. It's like neuro what? Neuroinclusive, neuroqueer, neurospicy, which is a bit of a fun term. But an individual is neurodivergent.
Okay.
They belong to a neurodiverse group. So neurodiverse is a group and a neurodivergent is the individual. Neuroinclusion are the policies and the practices that organizations put in place to be neuroinclusive.
What do you think organization should put in place to embrace all these kinds of beautiful minds?
Yeah, it's interesting. We have a phrase, you've met one person with ADHD, autism, dyscalculia, whatever it is, scratch off the term. You've met one person with ADHD. It shows up so differently for lots of people, many people. There's similarities. We've got similarities, but it shows up differently because no one has walked in your shoes and no one has the experience that you have had. And so it's really important. And my belief is that if organizations start to look at policies that's around inclusion and how we can be inclusive, instead of saying, okay, let's make an adjustment for you because you are neurodivergent. It's sort of putting a lot of
pressure on one person.
There. And when you already don't want to be visible, you don't want to be disruptive, you're already trying really hard to fit in sometimes and to mask some of who you are. So it's really about saying, what can we do to promote cognitive diversity? So really simple things, because it's not always about the really big things, but what do people need? So I'll give you an example. I got pulled into a workshop with Deloitte last minute. literally like, why aren't you in this workshop? It had already started. You need to come into this. And I go in, and for me, I'm like, okay, I know what you're talking about. My memory recall, I cannot recall what it is that I need to recall in this moment to take part. I can't thrive and you can't get the best out of me because I need processing time.
Yeah.
So if I knew the topic, if I knew roughly what we're going to be talking about, that's what I do. I even just create myself little mind maps of that, just words of like, okay, right. Yeah, I've had some processing time. So anyone who's running a workshop or having a meeting, it's like, provide an agenda, provide a purpose. Why are we here? Is there things that you want people to come with? Then give people that choice that if they want to do that prep work, they do it. If they don't, they don't. That's okay. But all you're doing is being then inclusive for those that want to or need to. It's like that's a really simple way of considering.
Yes, I think that give a chance to everyone to align before and to know what it is about, the context, so that they are not surprised and suddenly a little bit confused and like trying to stay on page, even if they don't know what it is about. I absolutely can relay on that.
Yeah. And not to think that just because someone has challenges that they're not capable.
Yes.
So I get performance anxiety. Others do, but then don't think that because someone has anxiety over that it's like, oh, well, we'll never give them the opportunity to speak and to talk and to lead. It's all about how can you do it in a way that gives people choice or encourage or motivate.
Yeah. So how can organizations benefit from embedding these neurodiversity practices into their cultures?
When we recognize that everybody has different qualities and strengths that we can bring to the table, we can really start to explore and really become innovative. Otherwise, if everyone is saying, let's do it this way, and everyone's going, oh, yes, that's a good idea, that's where we get groupthink. But even if it's like, oh, yes, that's a good idea, and what about this? And what about that? So for me, for example, my qualities and strengths, they are from a people side of things. I love being in connection with people. I've done countless IDEO courses on design thinking, on around empathy and connecting with others. And it's something that is innate in me and it's natural to me. And it's probably why I was drawn to those design thinking courses, because it speaks to my heart. Now, you put me with somebody who is incredibly technical, driven, and task oriented. We make a beautiful pairing, and we're starting to look at both sides. So, yes, if you're thinking about, oh, God, we've got something really complex that we need to do, and you've only got people looking at the technical aspects of it, bring in others that are more relationship focused, thinking about that side of things. So then you can come together, because it's not about when you bring groups together, agreement. It's about how we align and how we connect.
And how we can complement each other, right?
Mm.
And extend our capabilities from the experience and the perspectives of each other. Because as a creative person, we have a very free mind. So we imagine a lot of things. And sometimes we also need the people who are more practical, more technical, to give us a direction, what is possible and what is not possible. So that it's not about an agreement, it's about finding the best solution, which is on one side creative, innovative, but also on the other side possible to implement.
Yeah. And how we then go about problem solving and decision making. Again, it's like we're looking at things from a much broader perspective instead of it being just one perspective on one side.
Yeah, absolutely. We will talk about an event which is happening, which is called Inclusive Facilitation Day. We will talk about it. Could you tell me how facilitators can be more inclusive in their session?
So part of what we're doing on the day is around this educate, explore, and experience. So most of us come at running a workshop, running a session, and we have got really good intentions, but we don't always know why or what is it that we can do. I've done a couple of polls recently and asking people, well, what is stopping you from being able to contribute? And what some people will say, for some, it's too fast paced. So they're not able to contribute in the moment because the conversation, it's all happening too quickly. They can't jump in. So they can't gather their thoughts together. They're struggling to decide and articulate what they're thinking and what they want to say. And then it's like, oh, the moment's gone and it's past. And I haven't got the ability to. The other side of things that is really important to be aware of is that there's something called rejection sensitive dysphoria. And some say it's probably one of the most challenging aspects of ADHD. But this is where we feel viscerally painful, either perceived or real rejection. And the perceived bit is really important because when we perceive that we're going to be rejected, that might be in a group setting. So if we don't feel safe, so like, I might look stupid. I don't want to look stupid. It's not safe for me to even look stupid in this environment. So if we are creating sessions that are really fast paced and really energized and let's keep people moving and going, others can get exhausted by it and then also be too fast and then also be like, actually, I'm just going to look stupid here. I don't know what it is that I want to say because I can't process my thoughts. Creating spaces for solo work where people can process for themselves. So liberating structures, we talk about it quite a lot, but liberating structures is really useful for cognitive diversity. Having that solo time for yourself to process your thoughts, having one-on-one conversation to listen to others, for you to be listened to, and then another smaller group of 4 people, and then the bigger group. And the reason why that can work and is useful is because you have potentially got a louder voice that might amplify a quieter voice. And you've also got someone who is able to process their thoughts and words and narrative. And then maybe if they choose, they can then share with a wider group. And that's a really important piece, is letting people choose.
Yes, inviting them, but don't force. So inviting volunteer at the end to report what has been said or what was one takeaway, or even inviting them to give their feedback of the conversation, but like on sticky notes so that they can again give their thoughts about it. Yeah. Yes, I think it's actually being aware that you need different rhythm in a session, and depending on the pace of your session or the little parts, make lower moments where everyone can process and then energize again, and be very aware about reading the room and every participant. Is everyone involved? Do I see someone who is not involved, and not pointing out this person to say, oh, you are not participating? I think this is something wrong to do, but just try to use the techniques like the 1, 2, 4 all you were just talking about, or other techniques, using more visuals or using more your hands with Lego Serious Play, for example, to express something, are sketching and drawing to express on another ways. What I try to do is really to make a mix of the different techniques in one session so that I get everyone on certain points and that I don't lose anyone. So I think the mixity of the things that you are doing is also very, very important.
Yeah. The point of the sketching one is really interesting. And anyone who works with visualizations.
Yeah.
There is there's a condition called aphantasia.
Mm-hmm.
And it's different extremes depending on where people are with it. So it means for some, they cannot visualize at all. So if anyone says, think of a time, and you're asking someone to imagine something and they cannot, that can be actually like, oh, this is really tough for me. So there's the extreme where it's literally like a black TV. There's black box. There's nothing. To another side of things where it might be, and this is for me sometimes, I can't always bring images to mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to say don't laugh, but you won't. But I'll probably laugh at myself. When I was 6 years old, I couldn't draw a spider. It was traumatic. The script that I had for myself at that point is I cannot draw because I can't bring images to mind.
Mm-hmm.
I might be able to bring a real life scenario if I can imagine it, but anything like that, I can't bring images to mind always in that way. So if anyone asks me to draw anything, and I've been in workshops where people force you to draw something about your life, I can't do it. So then it becomes you're not in flow. It stops your flow. So anything that's drawing related, invite both people to do words, shapes, and draw. And when doing visualizations, let people know, ideally beforehand. I've done it where I've forgotten to tell people and said it afterwards when I was in my early awareness of this. Say it at the start, we're going to do this visualization. Not everyone can visualize. So if that's the case for you, tap into your body sensations, tap into how the air feels around you, tap into more of those senses. What do you smell? So it enables people to still participate without it being, I don't visualize, so I can't. And then they might have found workarounds for themselves or just accept it. But colours as well. Some people just see colours and shapes. But that's a really big one.
Actually, it is really about being aware that someone might not draw, invite them to use words, for example, instead of drawing. If you are stuck, or invite them to do like the feel if they are stuck. This is something that you should also express as a facilitator. So don't worry if you cannot use words, use colors on your word, draw just the word in a nice way so that it's really express something. And this event that will take place in London is exactly about learning how to put more inclusivity in your craft as a facilitator. And I am so happy to be there with you guys because there are incredible speakers.
Yeah.
Facilitators also, facilitators that I had on the podcast, like Jan Keck, Pedro Embarrassment, and people that I am following since years. And I don't know, like Moisim, who is bringing the whole gamification into facilitation. So can you tell me a little bit about the event? When does it happen? What do you plan?
Yeah. So it's happening during Neurodiversity Celebration Week on the Friday, the 21st of March, Central London, Shoreditch Way. So great creative area to be in. And it's about hearing from people who have got lived experience. We've got Denny de Klerk, who's going to talk about his lived experience of autism, but also around from a, what are some of his needs, but also how he's worked with others in inclusivity. We've got Kerry, and her surname absolutely escapes me right now, but she's going to come and talk to us about the neuroscience. And I've been diving into this recently, and I am fascinated by it. So yeah, I'm now. My next big idea is, okay, I think I'll go and do a PhD. It's fascinating. But, what our brains are doing from cognitive diversity, that's what it is. It's how our brains, diversity is how our brains are wired differently. We think differently. And to me, and I hope I've got his surname correctly, Sotaya, the Black dyspraxic, is going to talk to us about his lived experience and the intersectionality. He's Black. He's neurodivergent, and he is a man and has power.
Yeah.
And what does that actually mean? And what does it mean from a group setting? And so we've got a couple of workshops. So Jan's he's going to be ice melting us.
I know. I can't wait for it.
It's going to be amazing. So getting to experience that. And then the idea as well is what we really want to do is bring in this education side of things, bring this information into, knowing things that you don't know, and then having, for some of the sessions, facilitated discussions. So it becomes a combination of a talk and then how can we create a neuroinclusive facilitated discussion so that you can walk away with information, your why, what are people's lived experience, so you can connect to that empathetic side and have a toolkit that you can take away with and go, how do I want to blend this into my work? What we really want people to come with and to connect with is people who want to make a difference in the world and build this community and this momentum, because there isn't anything out there that's like it.
Yeah.
And I've been to a few things and they try, but it doesn't really come from that lens of neuroinclusion and inclusivity. So we want to then create a community and build that momentum where we continue it, where how do we create inclusive facilitation and continue that and learn from one another. And so instead of being afraid, to be excited by it.
Absolutely. I can't wait about this. I know that I will facilitate one of this conversation. We are just about creating all the things. You and Jenny Martin are the organizers.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of speakers, a lot of great facilitators. We will all be there on the 21st of March in London. So there are still seats open. And when you go to the show notes, you will see a very nice discount voucher to give you a little bit of discount to join us there. 21st of March in London. Jane, thank you. Thank you very much for being my guest.
Thank you, Natty. It's wonderful to be here. And if anyone wants to connect, if there's ever any questions or anything, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I try and just be there at the moment because otherwise I get distracted by too many different social media. But please connect. And yes, there's a discount. And we really want it to be a safe space for people to explore and play and learn and connect. And it will be, we're really excited to see everybody there. It's going to be amazing.
It's going to be amazing. We see us there. Jane, thank you very much.
Can't wait to see you, Natty.
Bye-bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't hesitate to contact our guest. You will find all the information in the show notes. And hey, if you like the content of There's a Workshop for That, please give it a 5 stars on your podcast app. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, La Workshopeuse. Also, I'd love to read your comments, suggestions of guests, or any question you have. For this, use the form called Hey Natty in the show notes. And until our next episode, I wish you good health, success, and lots of happiness. Au revoir!